What's going on, guys? It's Adam P, and welcome back to more Newcastle United transfer news. Press conference time. Eddie Howe has now spoken out since that bombshell statement on Alexander Isak during the week. We also have news regarding Liverpool's press conference, and as always, transfer news. Nicholas Jackson news. We've got news regarding Strand Larsen. We've got news with Yoane Wissa. We've got a lot to get into in this video today. So as always, if you are new around here, make sure you get down there, hit that subscribe button, join the journey. There will be a double upload later, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on that second video later in the day. Let's get through the press conferences first. We'll briefly mention Liverpool's because they did theirs 2 p.m. on a Thursday ahead of a Monday night kickoff. That's suspicious. They never ever do a press conference on a Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. That is such an obscure time. And I just wanted to say in regards to that, keep an eye on Liverpool today, because if they've moved the press conference this far out of the way just to make sure full focus and their point of view is on the game going towards Monday, I wouldn't be surprised if there's any tricks behind the scenes where Liverpool could potentially throw an Isak bid in there, or Liverpool just try and stir the pot behind the scenes. So keep an eye on that, because the fact that Arne Slot has answered questions before Friday, I certainly will be keeping an eye on them this weekend. But Eddie Howe's comments, on the other hand, it is disappointing I am having to mention this at length and take this away from the football. The players have done well to blank it out. It is there in the background. It is regrettable we are in this situation. Isak will not be part of the squad this weekend, of course, the Monday game. The club has to act in the best interest of Newcastle. It will do that in every situation. It looks like it is coming to an end, or it will come to an end pretty quickly. The statement was a sad moment. My preference is these things do not happen publicly. They are better dealt with behind closed doors, but needs must with our response statement. The club has spoken, and justifiably so in that moment. He's contracted to us. He's our player. My wish is that he would be playing on Monday. He won't be, and that's regrettable. But 100%, I want him back in a Newcastle United shirt. A lot to digest there, a lot to get into. Eddie Howe, of course, continuing his absolute best to stay through the middle. So there's a way back for Isak, while also warning Isak and warning the rest of the squad that we aren't going to accept this behaviour. So the way I look at it and the way I see it is, it's just going to be until the end of the transfer window. Once that window closes, it'll be then a reintegration process. Isak has got no alternative once that window closes. He either sit in the club until January, which realistically a player is not going to do, especially when you've got the World Cup next year, still wants to progress in his career. So regardless of what he wants currently, once that transfer window closes, you would expect the player to then start coming back into the team. And Eddie Howe's statement, I think probably the biggest one was what Lee Ryder had quoted. And when you look at his comments about this being resolved pretty quickly, Eddie Howe's still leaning both ways, and he hasn't fully stuck with Newcastle. Well, I want to keep him, hasn't stuck with the club fully keeping him, and he still has left the card open. And I think Newcastle's club statement as well, they've done the same, while they've said in the statement that we don't foresee these conditions being met to allow an Isak sale. They've never said they aren't going to sell Isak. It's kind of been, well, we're going to leave the cards open, keep the player happy, while realistically we know he's not going to leave. We're not going to sign two strikers, so we're not going to let Isak go. And it's kind of like, well, let's make sure we say he can leave this summer just so the player can look back at the end of the window and go, well, I tried. Even though deep down everyone knows at this point Newcastle is just not going to let this guy go. I would honestly say the door is closed unless two strikers come in, which I just don't see happening. You've got to be realistic. You've got to be honest. We haven't signed one striker yet, and you've got 10 days to go. Are we going to sign two strikers in the last 10 days? I don't think so. I think the market's too tight now. I don't think there's enough room or leverage to be able to move around with. And I think it's one striker in and then Isak stays. That's how I currently see it, and that's how I think it will go. But before we talk about who those strikers could be, I feel so bad at Eddie Howe. I've said this every single week at this point, but I do. I mean, this poor guy is in there in the press conference getting Isak questions left, right, and centre. He's trying to get his squad together, and he's trying to move ahead and have two eyes on Liverpool. But yeah, I'm sat here. Everyone else will be sat here just talking about Isak. That's all the talk is about, because he has selfishly went public with, I mean, let's be honest, quite a vague and nonsensical statement with no real validity or no real evidence to back what he's saying. He just went, well, Newcastle's broken promises, but he hasn't expressed what promises were broken. He hasn't expressed anything. He's went public while not really going public, because he went public with the statement, but not actually went public with any details. So all he's done is made noise, and yet he's made quite damaging noise, which, to be honest, from the Liverpool point of view, I wouldn't be surprised if they're quickly swift on after this weekend and just sign a different striker, because there's nothing stopping them from coming back in January, or nothing stopping them from coming back next summer. So why is Liverpool going to want to put up all this now and potentially have to spend more money than they need to, when deep down they know they can just come back later? And I think Liverpool might actually do that. I don't understand why Liverpool fans and Liverpool as a club seem to be so, I guess, insisted on coming in for Isak. There's other players out there. They have the pull power to sign anyone, whereas Newcastle desperately doesn't. Hence why we haven't signed any strikers this summer. So I feel like Liverpool have the freedom of just going elsewhere. I don't understand why Liverpool fans seem to be so fixated on needing Isak this summer. Just sign a different striker. You guys are going to get him eventually anyway. He wants to come at Liverpool. It's not like he's not going to join in January or next summer. You guys can still get him, but Newcastle now just need to ride the storm out. Once that window closes, we can then finally look to getting them back into the team, because this has just been a joke of a window in this respect. I'm sick of this Isak stuff by now. Take that stuff away. I actually think Newcastle's had a good window outside of that. Now, there has been reports from Mano claiming that Newcastle, within the last 48 hours, have contacted Nicholas Jackson again. They want to bring Jackson in, is the claim, while there's been options on the likes of Bayern Munich and Aston Villa as well. So Jackson seems to be quite a high in demand player towards the back end of the transfer window. I've always stated Jackson or Wissa. That's the only way I say it go. There's no way Jackson and Wissa is coming in, the two players in the African Cup of Nations. It makes no logical sense for Newcastle to do the pair of them. So if all of a sudden there's Jackson news starts coming out and there starts to be a lot of news about Jackson, tells me that we'll walk away from Wissa, tells me that Newcastle is just not going to go back in for Yoane Wissa. So if there's anything legitimate about Nicholas Jackson over the next couple of days, then I feel like we could do something about that. Obviously, Bayern Munich in there. Listen, Bayern's quite a good club. So if there's even any real chance of Bayern actually signing him towards the end of this window, again, it's been the problem all window long with these strikers. When Newcastle go for a player, a different team is there. And that sounds like it will be a case again. And that also sounds like if Newcastle was to put a bid in, Bayern Munich might just swoop them up. And you have to be honest, would you pick Bayern over Newcastle? I would say yes. So when you've got the two options there, Jackson also is just going to be ridiculously expensive. Just doesn't seem a player talking potentially upwards of 70 million, 80 million, just crazy money if Chelsea was to use this situation to their advantage, which you would expect them to do. So when you look at this now, it just doesn't seem feasible, in my opinion, that we'll get Jackson. We might do, maybe I've misjudged it, and maybe I've looked at the situation and maybe this demand isn't quite as high as journalists have made it out to be. But ultimately, Nicholas Jackson, if we go for him, we won't get Yoane Wissa. As for Strand Larsen, there's been links from several, I guess, lesser sources. The Express and Star claim that Newcastle are fighting and pushing to sign Larsen for around £60 million. But deep down, I've seen all the links, I've seen all the posts on social media yesterday, but there's not really any links that I've actually seen that tells me Newcastle are going to go for Larsen. The links I've seen are ones that I haven't heard from before, or ones that deep down I haven't got a real, I guess, trust towards. I'm not saying they're not true, but I need more meat on the bones to be able to really go through and say that Strand Larsen is a possibility. But he does continue to be a name that is linked out there that Newcastle could be looking to bring in this summer. But based on the links yesterday, there's nothing there for me to currently say that this is a real link, and I feel like it's almost been drummed up a bit too much. I just don't personally believe the links just yet. As for Yoane Wissa, no real updates since we had the official third bid according to Ben Jacobs, but a £35 million up front plus £5 million an add-on bid, as explained from Keith Downey here. So when you look at the bid coming in, of course, got rejected fairly quickly from Brentford, and there's not been any noise since, and it's even been described by Keith Downey as well that you've got a player here who wants to join because of the French African heritage and history at Newcastle. So it seems to be a player that's fully on board and has been able to say the right thing at the right time to keep me and our supporters invested as well, because deep down, I'm not going to deny it is a player that wants to. Unfortunately for us, though, again, we're in that situation. Isak, Brentford's in that situation with both players are being almost locked in. You're not going. So that's kind of the stance. And Newcastle, unless they're willing to put £60 million, which I don't think you would, on a 29-year-old, that's the situation now. You're just not going to get him unless you are able to somehow figure this out. Unless you are able to somehow figure this out, and then we can come to a resolution, and then we can come to some form of agreement. But at the minute, it's still a question of who, to be honest, a question of who we're going to bring in. And over the weekend, I'm sure you're going to see more happen. If not today, I think, especially how many days are left now, I expect things to change every day. I would expect Newcastle to be very swift in how they go about their business. But for this video, just going for the press conference reaction, what Eddie Howe has said towards the player, being able to talk and analyse everything in this video. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. It's certainly been a fascinating one today. And as always, we'll be back later on today. So appreciate your support as always. Take care, and we will see you all in the next one.